Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Business with me, Suseth. I'm your hostess with the mostest, and today we have a very important topic to talk about. That is mental health, okay? We're going to be talking with Roxanne Francis about mental health surrounding business owners and the importance of it, okay? So I'm really excited. Roxanne is a huge deal. She has been featured on so many different TV stations, TV shows, and I can't wait to speak to her today. So just to give you a bit of a background, Roxanne is a award-winning registered social worker and psychotherapist. She is the CEO of Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting Services. Roxanne has been featured on Your Morning TV, CTV, CP24, The National, Essence, and the Toronto Star, and the Brandon Gomez Show, and most recently, the Breakfast Television. I told you, she is a big deal. So we're going to be talking about mental health and all things surrounding that. I'm just waiting for to join in. Hey guys, how are you doing? Happy Thursday. I'm so excited for this one. Mental health is a very important topic. Roxanne, you have to send me the request. Hold on. There we go. All right. So mental health is the person to talk to. Okay. So thank you guys for joining me today on Let's Talk Business. Just to do another reintro. Oh, she's coming in. Roxanne is a award-winning registered social worker and psychotherapist. She is the CEO of Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting Services. Roxanne has been featured on Your Morning CTV, CP24, The National, Essence, The Toronto Star, The Brandon Gomez Show, and most recently, Breakfast Television. Oh, we're just having some issues here. Hold on. Oh, it's timing out.
Uh-oh.
Are you there?
Yeah,
I
can see you.
Oh, I can't see you. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Yay. Technical difficulties. Hi. Hi, Roxanne. How are you?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me, Sue.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for letting me interview you. I feel like you're such a big superstar.
You're
Been
a
on
big deal.
Me? Oh, I have not been on real TV yet, okay? You have been on every platform, there could be. So I am honored to have you on here. Thank you so much for joining me. So guys, we're gonna get right into it. Roxanne, please tell everyone what exactly it is that you do.
Yeah, I do a few things. First and foremost, I am a psychotherapist and a social worker. So I run a virtual group practice. There are 6 of us as clinicians, and we're growing. We work with kids, adults, couples, seniors. We help people manage mental wellness, stress, burnout, all that stuff. But I also do consulting to organizations and companies around wellness at work, racial issues at work, avoiding racism in the hiring practice, and all those pieces. I talk, I give keynotes and stuff on parenting, mental wellness, racial trauma, all those things, right? Everything around those things. I also like to speak on women's issues. So, you know, things like parenting, getting married or being in a couple, separation and divorce, caring for aging parents, what it's like having to live with trauma in your childhood and how that impacts you as an adult. All those things impact us, right? So
yeah, of course.
anything having to do with mental wellness and keeping your wits about you, that's me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. So that's that is a huge bio. Okay, guys, I told you, big deal here, big deal. So that's amazing. So kind of circle back, you said that you do a lot of corporate stuff. So you actually go into different workplaces and you talk to like employees, I guess, about maintaining their mental health and just kind of balance in life.
Yeah, so companies call me and sometimes they ask me to do generally one of 2 things. One, it's usually coming in and talking to the staff in general around some of these topics. So the topics could include parenting, wellness at work, racial dynamics at work, facilitating a listening session for Black employees who feel like they can't talk about being Black at work with their white colleagues or leaders. But I also get called in to speak specifically to the leaders around how they can facilitate psychological safety at work, how they can be a trauma-informed leader, how they can avoid racism in the hiring practice, things like that.
Oh, wow. So do you approach the companies, or would they seek you out? Like, does something have to happen and then they seek you out, or
A
is it like a
little bit of both.
proactive approach?
So because I'm a businesswoman and I'm always trying to drum up business, right? So sometimes I'm networking, or sometimes I'm on LinkedIn, and I might reach out to a leader that I might be familiar with, or I see someone doing things. I'm like, hey, you know, lead such and such company, or you lead these many people. Have you ever thought of, or do you have these issues? Here's, you know, I've created a capabilities deck, and I'll send it to them, and I'll say, these are the things that I cover. Is there anything here that you might need? And sometimes they will say, yes, as a matter of fact,
Oh,
we were thinking, and I might get
okay.
business that way. And sometimes people will reach out to me because I'm on the media. Whenever I get a media opportunity, I get them to send me the link, and I will always post that on social media. And I've had like big companies reach out to me just because they've seen me talk about things on the media. You know, the other day I reposted something that I did on CBC radio from last February, and I reposted it, and a company wrote to me and said, I love that topic. Can you come in and talk to our staff on this thing?
Wow, that's amazing. So, guys, first of all, you said repost. I love that because a lot of times people are stressing themselves out with creating content. I'm like, you can go back a year ago, even like a couple of
Yeah,
weeks, because you posted a month ago doesn't mean that I saw it. I may have
right.
missed it, and now it's like, you
Yeah.
know, way down your page. So I love that, first of all. Secondly, I love your approach that you actually go out and you seek out
Yes,
companies that may need
girl.
that, because sometimes people don't even know they need it, right? Especially where it comes around racial issues.
Right.
It's something that I don't know, I've experienced it, and I know it happens very often, but then it's not something that people feel comfortable in talking about because they might feel that they might lose their job,
Right.
or, you know, they're just uncomfortable. So I love the fact that you have a proactive approach, and that companies are becoming more aware and they're also having a
Yeah.
proactive approach. That
And
makes a huge difference.
the important thing, you know, that I talk about often is that I post about this as well, that, you know, just because someone is a leader in your organization and they're a Black person, it doesn't mean that they want to talk about racial issues. It doesn't mean that they're qualified to talk about racial issues. And, you know, talking about racial issues is not in their job description, and you're not paying them extra. So hire a consultant who has the background in this and pay them for it.
Yeah. Oh, of course, and it makes sense. You know, I had my brother, my former brother-in-law. He was applying for a job, and the person interviewing him was Black, and on paper, in person, he was a right fit. But the guy, the one interviewing him, he's like, I don't know if I should hire you because they might think that I'm picking you because I'm Black. And I
Right.
was like, that,
Right.
yeah. He
Yeah.
said that. He's like, I feel, he's like, and he didn't actually hire him, and he got a different position. But then it was like, how do you go about that? How do you respond to that? And he said to, you know, off the record, but that is something that I heard of happening very, very often. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's ridiculous. If I'm qualified, what does it matter what,
Exactly.
you know, my skin color is? But sometimes, you know, you might feel conflicted, right?
It's real.
So
It's
it's
real.
real.
I've heard,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bozoma St. John in the States. She was a chief marketing officer at Pepsi, Netflix, Uber. She's amazing. I've heard her say that when she had this VP position at a big company, she would be hiring Black individuals. And at one point, HR came to her and said, why is it the place is looking a little bit different? Why is it that you're only hiring people who look like you? And she said to
Uh-huh.
the HR person, are you going to go around the corner and ask Ted, why is it that all the people that he hires look like him? Right? So
Exactly.
when you have that conversation with him, we can have this conversation.
Yeah. Good.
But not
Good
everybody
for
feels
her.
safe enough,
Yeah.
right? Who has the power to
Yeah.
have the capacity to have those conversations.
Yeah, of course. No, that and it happens very often.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk because everyone on here is business owners. So we're gonna kind of circle around business owners and the stress,
Mm-hmm.
the stress that we experience. So, you told us a lot of the services that you offer. In terms of business owners, what are some common stressors? I think I know and experience a lot of them, but what are some common stressors that business owners typically face as a business owner?
Yeah, a lot of them. The one that comes to my mind immediately is the unpredictable nature of the business, right? You are swimming in it today, and then, you know, no clients or no customers tomorrow, right? And so sometimes it's hard to tell if the money that you have next month is going to be the same money that you're bringing in, you know, from month to month, you know what I mean? And so there is the stress of that. There is the idea of, I can't turn it off. Like my mind, I'm always thinking about work. And so that can become an issue with family, right? You know, my 11-year-old says to me, you know, I want a phone. You're always on your phone. I'm like, this makes me money. When your phone, when I get, when phone can make you money, we can talk, right?
I'm not playing video games here.
Exactly.
It's not YouTube.
And then there's also the isolation. So if all of your friends are working for a company and you're the only one who's an entrepreneur, then it can feel like no one understands, right? And so it can be really, amen. Yes, let the church say amen. It can be really, really challenging when it feels like no one else gets it. And so when that happens, it's easy to slip into depression, right? Because you're alone with your thoughts. You try to explain it, but no one understands. There's no one that you can really complain to or who you can commiserate with. And it can be challenging. Or if you are in the field and if you have friends who are in business, but all of your friends are doing the same business as you, then you can't really commiserate too much because you're competing for the same pool of clients, right? So who do you bounce ideas off of? Who do you complain to or vent to? So it can be really, really challenging that way.
Oh, for sure. So you hit the nail on the head. I keep getting mixed up. I'm always trying to say something sane, and then
you hit the nail on the head. I think you were right.
The nail on the head. There we go. 3 times. All right. So you said the unpredictable nature of the business. So background story, if you guys don't know, I say it all the time. I had a full-time job working from home, quit it to do my business full-time, not this business. I used to be an event planner. And I was booked and busy every single weekend. And I was burnt out because I was dealing with full-time work and then full-time kids and then business on the weekends. So I was just going 24/7. So I decided I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this business full-time. And it wasn't until I did my business full-time that I realized I wasn't making the money I was supposed to be making.
Right.
I was in charge, right? That was a whole other issue in itself. But then what I had to do, I had to take a pause in the business to reevaluate it, rebrand it, and retarget it. During that time, I didn't make any money. So I went from being up here to like down here scrambling. Like, what did I do? And I fell into depression because I felt that I was doing a good thing. I thought it was a great move. I felt inspired. And I was like, Suseth, why did you do that? And it was hard because you start to spiral down, right? You start questioning everything. And then, like you said, isolation, because you have everybody else around you they don't like to be called employees with employees. You know, they can't relate because, like, why would you leave a job? You're working from home. You're making good money. Why would you leave that job? And so now I can't really talk to you. Who do I talk to, right? Therapist.
Yes.
But, you know, while you're going through it, it's not the first thing. Your natural instinct wants to go to your mom, wants to go to your sister, wants to go to a friend. And, you know, I have a really good support system, but then there's times where it's like they just don't understand. Well, Sue, get a job. I'm like, I don't want to. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And it's hard to relay that information because they're just not seeing eye to eye. Well, and that's what you get. You're a business owner, and sometimes it can be good, sometimes it's not. I'm like, but I know the business owners that are doing well, and I want to get there. And isolation is a huge thing, and that's why I do what I do with all these events, because I want to tell other business owners that you don't have to go through it alone.
You're not alone.
Because I've been through it alone. And it's not a nice road to go on at all. And you know, it's something that you start to like become this introvert, and you're like, okay, you start questioning yourself, and why did I do this? Depression, anxiety, should I still continue? Should I pull out of my business? And like you said, now it's always on your mind. So that's like how the flow goes, because like first it's unpredictable. Now, did I do the right thing? Isolation. And then now, how do I fix it? Do I get out of it? And you're always on your mind. I sleeping problem. My brain is 24/7 with ideas, with problems, with solutions. And like you said, there's also the balance with your family, because most women, we have families, whether it's a husband or a child, like we have some sort of family, and now we have that part. And I know that me as a business owner created a huge problem in my marriage. That was a really big thing, because it was almost like I was married more to the business than I was to my husband. And he didn't get it. Like, I'm like, I have to respond to this email at 11 o'clock, or else they're going to go somewhere else. Always on my mind. And so I want to ask you, how can one go about getting that balance? Because that was really hard for me. I still struggle with it still to this day, because my children also complain I'm always on my phone. How would you recommend business owners finding some sort of balance with work and personal life, and then me time too? So that's a whole other thing as well.
The answer that I would give varies depending on, and it's kind of like, I'm kind of putting on your shoes a little bit in terms of giving business advice, but depending on where you are in your business, if you are able to hire help, then I would say get an assistant, because it is going to save you, right? You won't be double booking yourself. You'll have someone responding to emails on your behalf, checking voicemails, so you don't have to always be on. If that's not possible, then put some systems in place, right? I support therapists who are new to the practice, and I will say to them, create an out of office if you want, right? By a certain hour, 5:30, 6 o'clock, say, so glad I got your email. I'm out of the office until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I will respond to you then, right? So give people an idea of when to expect to hear from you. Now, some people have some concerns around that, because like you said, depending on the business, they don't want to miss out on the sale, because if someone emails you and they get a bounce back, they might go to somebody else. But you have to decide, you have to create some kind of cutoff. You have to decide, am I going to be up until 12:30 a.m. responding to emails, or am I going to tuck my child in bed at 8:30, 9 o'clock and call it a night, right? So get some support, whether that's putting systems in place to work for you, or hiring an assistant to respond to some of those things. The other thing is, talk to your family around this business. Have a meeting. Sit people down. Listen, mommy has a project, a big deadline coming up. During these 3 weeks, I am going to be super, super busy. I really need your guys' help to help me push this through. And how you can help me is, Auntie's going to come over and bring a casserole, or Daddy's going to order pizza or whatever. And during these hours, Mommy's really going to be working. I'll give you guys a kiss before I go into my work zone, and I'll see you in the morning, right? Give people expectation. Help them handle their expectation. Otherwise, they're going to feel like you're never around, and you are going to start to suffer for it, right? The relationships are going to start to come apart. Right? So help people handle expectations, get some support. But I would also say, find an accountability partner, or get into community, because those people or that person will create balances for you. Will be checking, what are you still doing up? You said you're going to get off Instagram by 10 o'clock, right? And so it's not just you. You have people creating checks and balances for you, so you can keep going and not deal with feeling like you're always on, or jeopardizing these relationships.
I really love that. So everyone, Roxanne didn't tell us that she's also a business consultant too. Because everything you just said, I say it all the time. You mentioned outsourcing and getting a virtual assistant. It's just that easy. So many times people think, oh, it's so unaffordable, it's so expensive. Well, it's an investment. Don't look at it as an expense, because the amount of time that you are now gaining doing the things you don't want to do, or the things that stress you out, you are paying so much to do that, but then you're getting that back as a peace of mind, as so that's one thing. And then I love the fact you mentioned having systems and the out of office. It's another thing I always tell people to do. Set the expectation. I was one of those people that I was like, respond to email right away. Like my turnover was 20 minutes. It was crazy. I'd have to pull over my car to like reply to an email.
Wow.
It was absolutely ridiculous. And then I put an out, like someone I had sent an email to, I had a notification that bounced back and said, hey, we'll reply to you in 24 hours. I'm like, oh, I actually like that. Okay, I can do something super simple.
Yep.
I created that, and then I also created a form. So you want to give them something in between to like, hey, fill out this form. If you're inquiring about X, Y, and Z, fill out this form. Here's how you book a call. And because that, a lot of times, you know, the common questions that people are inquiring to you about. So then I started creating templates. So everything was a process. I started creating templates because at the time I couldn't afford a VA, and I said, okay, I created templates, so now it's easier for me to reply instead of me having to type out the same email 10 times for the day. So there's so many things that you can put in place that can make your life a lot easier. And then as you grow, get a virtual assistant, then get a real, like not a real, but in-person full-time assistant. But this is where you recognize when you're getting stressed and burnt out, and you're growing your business. And the other thing you mentioned that I really like is to talk to your family about it. So with kids, I don't know if you know Jasmine Lee, she's a realtor. She incorporates her son, she calls him the CEO, and she incorporates her son into her business. And I like that fact. I also struggle with that too. I'm being very transparent. But I admire the fact that she incorporates him. She brought him to a speaking engagement that she had, and he spoke in front of like 400 people. You saw that one, right? I mean, like he's obviously a pro, but just incorporating the kids. I had an event on Sunday, and I brought my son to help me out. I still have to pay him actually. He didn't remind me 10 times, right? But I brought him because like it was either I was going to be gone all day, or I could bring him there and make him part of the business, right? So, guys, that's a tax write-off at some point as they're older. FYI. So those things make a huge difference, and it creates a balance because you're still spending time, not ideal time because you're working, but find ways to make it fun, right? So I had him at the front as a greeter, and I said, okay, this is your job. And I gave him, you know, tickets to hand out, and he felt like he was involved. He was involved. And it made a big difference versus me being gone all day. Right. So that's that's amazing. And I really like that. Sorry, my questions came off. I really like that idea. And accountability partner, you also mentioned that as well. I absolutely love that. So not something that's super structured, but something more surrounding, hey, you know, are you in bed? It's 11 o'clock. Did you eat today? Did you eat? I'm hungry as long as my belly eats. I don't eat till like about 2 o'clock. And then I'm like, so my body and my head starts hurting. I'm like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, I didn't eat. So something simple like that. What I started doing is put in reminders in my phone and time blocking. So I do that to kind of structure my time as well to like, so I don't get so heavy into work. So that's another thing, guys, you can do is time block, like put reminders in your phone. Okay, time to eat or time to spend with the kids. I actually have my time blocked off to pick up my kids between they go to after school program between 5 and 6. So like that's their time. And then after that. So it's you know, there's so many things that you can do if you can't afford to hire someone. There's so many things you can do to kind of mitigate the stressors. So thank you for that. That's amazing. So kind of extending on that now. So for those people that that have the stressors and they're really like burnt out, what can that lead to? So if you don't put any things in place, what can happen when you mentioned depression, when you're overwhelmed and you just keep going? What's some other mental health issues that you can have?
So I often say that stress is really the core of most mental health challenges, right? And depending on what you have already been through, you are sometimes just a little bit away from a mental health breakdown, right? If you've never had any childhood trauma, any teen issues, no parent, you know, foolishness, then chances are you have a bigger gap between I'm doing great and I'm falling apart, right? If you've already had some stuff happen in your life, then you have a smaller buffer, right? So if you are not doing some of these things that we talked about earlier, then you can find yourself being really sad, feeling really down and depressed when the dollars are not coming in. What have I done? Feelings of failure start to set in. You start talking about yourself poorly. Then you're like, what's the point of getting out of bed? This doesn't make any sense. And before you know it, depression has set in. Then there's also anxiety, where, oh my goodness, what if I don't have enough clients? Then I won't get, and then before you know it, you've talked yourself out of having two clients in a, two clients that haven't paid you, to now your mind is spiraling to thinking you're going to be homeless in 3 weeks, right? So you want to, like, it happens, right?
Oh, I know. Oh, I know.
You want
Happens
to be
about
mindful. Yes, yes.
Over here.
You want to be mindful about your anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
You want to ask yourself, how true is this thought that I'm having? I was just talking to a client earlier on today about the fact that your thought isn't necessarily a fact. It's just an idea that your mind has come up with, right? Just because you think it doesn't make it true. And so ask yourself, how do I know that this is true? If I were to ask my best friend, would she agree with me? All of those things. You want to be mindful about things like, there's other mental health conditions. There are things like, there's eating disorders, right? When you feel like you have lost control, then sometimes we restrict food or we eat too much food as a method of trying to cope, right? As a method of trying to, well, I can't control all the other things, but I can control what goes in here, right? That has actually shot up throughout the past 3 years in the pandemic. There is agoraphobia, which is a kind of anxiety where you struggle to leave your home, right? Where it's you become really uncomfortable around other people. You become really uncomfortable outside of your house. It's hard for you to walk down the street. It's hard for you to go into the grocery store. Other things to watch for include things like bipolar disorder. A lot of people think that just because you're happy 1 minute and angry the next, it means you have bipolar. That person's just moody. Bipolar disorder, they call it manic depressive, because you develop a sense of mania where you feel like you're invincible, or you have all the money in the world and you can spend on everything. Or sometimes people stay up for like 4 days in a row without sleep. And when they come down, the crash is really, really bad. And the depression can land you in the hospital because you become suicidal, right? So bipolar disorder is a real significant issue. And, sometimes there are things that are underlying factors that might have happened before in your life that put you at risk, a greater risk for some of these things. But you really want to, what I will bring home here is that you really want to mind your stressors. I'm always talking about self-care, and people think that it's this thing that, we just, we just like to talk about.
Yeah.
But what really happens is that when stress is it can be a good thing, right? It motivates you to get things done. And sometimes we get stressed about a thing, we do the thing, and then the stress goes away. The challenge is when you are faced with stress every day, day in, day out, it never goes away. And your body starts to produce a chemical called cortisol, right? That's a stress hormone. When there's too much cortisol in your body, then it impacts your brain functioning. It impacts your mental wellness, and it also can impact your physical wellness. And so you really want to be mindful of your stressors. Start to incorporate some self-care techniques. Talk to other people who are in business. Community is your best friend. I love everything that you're doing about building community for entrepreneurs, because we need it. It is such an isolating way of life. You have to be really intentional about carving up community. Take time for yourself, get some sleep, eat properly, go outside, move your body, all that stuff.
Oh, of course. That makes a huge difference, and people don't realize how stress can be such a terrible thing. And I think that what happens is that something small becomes something big because it's not something that's addressed, right? You mentioned, like, if you went through something in your childhood, a lot of people suppress that, and they think they suppress it. They think it's like non-existent or it's in the subconscious, but really it's manifests itself into something else.
Yeah.
And now you don't understand why you get so angry when someone raises their voice, and it becomes these triggers, right? So that's something that I've learned in the last few years to be aware of my triggers. And then I'm like, okay, well, why is it when someone says something that triggers me? Because it's like, is it that bad? And awareness is the first step. It's to be aware, like, okay, why, like, what's my trigger and why am I being triggered? And then kind of working backwards, right? You'd mentioned your environment. That's a really big thing. A lot of times you have to look at who is in our environment. I know that don't want to speak poorly of the Caribbean culture, but Caribbean culture can be typically the older. It can be a negative environment. They have I'll talk about myself, my family. There's a lot of fear with the older people. Like, are you sure? Especially with me stepping outside the box and doing, like, I'm very just do whatever I want to do. And it's like this fear. It's always like, are you sure? Are you sure? And what if? And I didn't realize that I was actually like that too. It wasn't until my kids, and I was like, what am I saying? And I could hear my mother's voice through me, and I'm like, I can't be doing this. And I didn't even realize that I was doing it. So your environment plays a huge role. And I like the fact that you said have an accountability partner, because then you want someone that's positive. Not anybody can be your accountability. Someone that's positive. So that makes a huge difference. And a lot of times when you're getting into depression, because I don't know, some people, I had a debate with my friend whether it's depression or just being sad. We were talking about, like, where's the line? What's the difference between sad and, like, depression? What does that look like? Maybe you can answer that.
You want to look at your ability to function, right? If you are sad, you can sometimes still push through. Or if you are sad, your sadness will last for a couple of days, and then it will lift. Right? Or the situation will resolve itself and you will feel better. Depression is a cloud that comes over your head and it lingers and it just sits there and it sits there. And some people have high functioning, or what they call smelling depression, where you really sat in the core, but you get up and you do the thing anyway. And some people have, the more obvious depression, where you're not eating, you're having trouble sleeping, or you're sleeping too much, or you're not taking care of yourself, you're not doing your hair, you're not having a shower, you're not looking after the little children around you. If you are struggling with your functioning, then then chances are you have a depressive disorder that needs to be addressed. I see Jamelia talked about, what about masking? And that's really kind of like the high functioning depression, where you function as though everything is okay. You get up, you go to work, you go to business, but then at the end of the day, you're crying in the shower, or you open a bottle of wine to have a glass, and you're drinking the whole thing before you go to bed, right? These are some things to really pay attention to. But sadness in itself, it's like an emotion, like everything else, like pride, fear, happiness, excitement, and just like all those other emotions, sadness comes and it goes. Depression is usually here to stay. No,
that's a lot of great points. Masking is I think it's dangerous, because it's almost like I know that, again, looking back and self-reflecting, when I was an event planner, I used to do a lot of weddings, and near the end of my marriage, I was going through all these marital problems, but then I had these couples, and I was like, hey, oh my God, I'm happy to be married. In my head, I'm like, don't do it. I'm like, girl, run, don't do it. And I was doing that so much, and it was like putting on this mask, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. And that was like one of the reasons when I started to fall out of love with the business, because I was masking all the time. I didn't realize I was doing it. But I was going through my own personal things, but then I didn't want that to affect my business. So I was this happy-go-lucky person on the outside. And I think masking happens quite often. Look at Twitch. Exactly. Perfect example, right? You look at all his videos, you wouldn't have any inclination that he had any type of, a mental health issue. You would think that life was great.
Yeah.
And like that's on a high extreme, right? That's like he's not just someone who's just living, he's like dancing and happy, you know. So masculine is a very dangerous thing because it's like you feel that you have to put on a show, like you have to.
Right.
And it's like you're not dealing with your own internal issues. And that's when, like, for me with my event planning business, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, because I was pushing myself to smile and to like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. Meanwhile, I'm like, run. No, I'm like, don't do it. Don't. And it became such a burden on me. And I felt so heavy. And I didn't know what I was going through. Now I'm out of it. I'm looking back and like, yeah. So masculine is very, very it's very scary, I think. You also mentioned about being mindful and that awareness, right? So your thoughts, guys, I know sometimes it's hard to get in front of them. I know I struggle with that because automatically, again, environment and upbringing, my mind defaults to negative. Always. Always. I'm doing an event, I'm doing something, I always think, oh, I can't do it. But then I push past it. I'm like, you know what? Do it. What's the worst that can happen? That's what I tell myself. That's how I overcome that fear. That's how I counteract it. So that's a really, really important thing too. So next question. What are some of the anxiety. Okay, so what are some of the okay, so you mentioned some solutions in terms of dealing with depression. How about anxiety? How would you say someone should go about dealing with anxiety? Anxiety is something that a lot of people suffer from. A lot. Well, at least it's self-diagnosing.
No, a lot.
I think everyone thinks they're little therapists now. They're diagnosing themselves. I know I diagnose myself all the time.
You know, anxiety is an emotion like fear, joy, sadness, excitement. Everyone deals with it. And anxiety can be, like stress, anxiety can be useful, right? It can encourage you to do the thing, or it can, anxiety is a manifestation of fear, right? It can tell you to be careful because this thing might happen. And so it in itself, by itself, it can be a protective mechanism. But when you have an anxiety disorder is when that protective mechanism goes beyond its usefulness, right? And so let's say you go in the kitchen and you touch the hot stove and you get burned, right? General fear response would be careful in the kitchen. Check that everything is off. Make sure nothing is hot before you go towards it. Anxiety will say, never go in the kitchen again. Everything in the kitchen is dangerous. Anyone who works in the kitchen is dangerous. Maybe you should just order out for the rest of your life, right? It goes beyond the rational fear. And anxiety tends to challenge your functioning. Again, you want to look at how this thing is impacting your ability to function, your ability to live life in a meaningful way. And sometimes anxiety will, put the brakes on that really, really significantly, where you can't go out and enjoy yourself. You can't connect with friends because you worry, what is everybody thinking about me, right? That's social anxiety. When you think that everybody else has a negative perception of you, right? Then there is this constant worry. It's called generalized because it's throughout every facet of your life. This constant worry that something bad is going to happen. If that is you, then we need to talk about how we can manage that. And you can manage that by asking yourself a few questions. Question 1, how do you know that this thing is going to happen? Where's the evidence? That's another question. Where's the evidence that this thing that you were thinking is actually true? Another question to ask yourself is, who has told you that, right? And because sometimes we've had negative people in our lives, maybe someone has told you that. But the question to ask yourself is that person credible? Does that person care about me? And how long has that person known me, right? And then if I were to ask my best friend about this thought that I'm having, would they agree with me? Would they agree with me that I'm a loser? Would they agree with me that everything I do is it fails, right? So ask yourself some of these questions and then ask yourself, where's the evidence that the opposite is true? So for example, if you are hosting an event and you are worried that no one is going to come, right? Ask yourself, how do I know that no one is going to come, right? Who has told me that no one is going to come? And where's the evidence that the opposite is true? Look for clues that people are actually going to come. They have paid, they have RSVP'd, people have called me asking about parking, like all of these things. So you want to run down some of that, some of those lists, some of these questions to ask yourself to keep that anxiety in check. The next thing is once you have surpassed that thing that you're anxious about, and let's say your event has gone smoothly, I want you to put that in your back pocket as a receipt for the next time you become anxious, right? So that for the next event, you start to worry, what if nobody comes? You go, oh, well, the last time I had that same worry and everybody showed up and we had to turn people away at the door because it was too full, right? So use that as your, to propel you forward in the truth as opposed to believing the lie. And the other thing to remember is these anxious thoughts that you have in your mind are not facts. They're just thoughts. And also, 90% of the things that we are worried about don't actually come to pass. Right?
That is 100% true. So I don't know if that example was just, it came to mind, or if I was the reason behind that, because I have, so even though I was an event planner for like 7 years, I always did other people's events. When I started to host my own events, anxiety, I don't know what's on top of anxiety, but I had serious anxiety. I had this idea in my head and I thought that's a great idea. But then when it came to the execution of it, I was like, no, I can't do it. No one's going to come. It's silly. And my mind would have these big conversations in my head, negative conversations. And what did you say it is? Like when you still push yourself through it? Because I'm like, okay, if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it.
Right.
If I do it, let's just see what happens. And the first event that I had, I was just, oh my goodness, I was back and forth. I'm like, this is silly. And I did delay it for a long time before I actually did it. And it was my assistant at the time. And she's like, Sue, let's just do it. What's the worst that can happen? And when she said that, it kind of stuck with me. I was like, that's true. What's the worst that can happen? And I did it. And the amount of people brought me to tears after the event, because they gave people I've never seen, Sue, thank you so much for doing this, and blah, blah. I'm like,
yes.
And I also love the fact that you're saying, ask yourself, like, answer your own question. Like, who told you that it wasn't? It's you. It's your mind. Right. I don't know why that is. Maybe, like you said, it's the environment and just being around, like, negativity and having that fear. My second event was games night for entrepreneurs. And in my head, again, I don't lack ideas, okay? I have all these great ideas in my head. They're always going through. And I'm like, okay, let's a networking event, but games night, because I want it to be fun. I don't want it to be your typical networking. And I went through all the motions. I was really excited about it. The morning I woke up, I remember I was in my bed and I put my alarm on. I woke up before the alarm. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was like, Suseth, what are you doing? I'm like, this is a word. I literally was having this conversation in my head. I'm like, this is a stupid idea. I'm like, no one's going to come. I already sold tickets already. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking. But it's like I totally disregarded that fact that I sold tickets. And I was in my head, I'm like, they're not going to like the games and they're going to think it's silly. And I had this whole thing. I was in my bed stiff for about an hour. I was like this, literally in bed. I'm like, cancel it. I'm like, how do you cancel it? And now, like, I went down this slippery slope. And then my phone rang, and it was my friend. And she's like, where are you? Are you up yet? Accountability.
Yes.
And she's like, and I go, I don't know if I should do this. She goes, get your butt out of bed and get ready. She goes, I'm on my way, and I'm not going to wait on you. And I got up. I did it again. People brought me to tears because of all the things. Thank you so much, Sue. This is so fun. And I don't know why it happens, but it happens almost every single time. I got better with the last one. But it's just this anxiety right before it. And I wouldn't call myself an anxious person. I'm very like bold. I can go out and do things, but it's like these certain moments, like when it comes right down to doing something that it just comes out of nowhere. It just comes in banging on my door, you know? Exactly here. Where are you?
The other thing that I would say is that around anxiety is sometimes I challenge my clients to lean into the anxious thought, right? Depending on the severity of the thought, of course.
Mhm.
But let's say, for example, you think to yourself, well, I'm going to plan this event and no one's going to come. So I always walk my clients through leaning into that thought. And I would say, okay, so let's follow that a little bit. What if no
Mhm.
one comes? Didn't they already pay for their ticket? Yes, they already paid for their ticket. So if they come, are you going to be out of pocket for the thing that you rented and the food that you ordered? And no, because it's all already paid for. Okay.
Mhm.
So what exactly are you worried about? Well, if no one comes, then my event is going to be considered a flop. Oh, is that what you think? What do you think your colleagues and your friends are going to say if no one comes? Well, if no one comes, maybe it's because of the snowstorm, or maybe it's because it was too far out. So it isn't because you are a bad event planner. No, not quite. Okay. So sometimes when you follow the anxious thought,
Mm.
you get to like, oh, okay, so the thing that I'm worried about isn't actually that serious, and I will survive it. And people won't think I'm crazy. And you realize that, okay, so if I actually, because we get these thoughts and we're so, they scare us so much that
Mhm.
they
Crippling.
paralyze us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
They bring us to inaction. And if
Mhm.
you just, you can even use a journal and write the thought down and then
Mhm.
ask yourself, then what? I do that with the kids that I work with, right? We get a notepad, I ask them to write the anxious thought down and then draw an arrow underneath it. Okay, so I'm worried about this thing. And if
Mhm.
this thing happens, then what
Mhm.
could happen? Then you write
Yeah.
down the thing that could happen. Then what could happen? And then you write down the thing that could happen. Then what? And then you realize, oh, it's actually not that scary after all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's one way to sort of manage some of those thoughts too.
Yeah. That's a really, really great solution because that is essentially, well, I mean, that time with my friend, she just kind of yelled at me and told me to get it
Yes,
together. But that's what I did with the first time. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? That's what
exactly.
I asked myself, like, what's the
Yes.
worst that can happen? And then I kind of like reverse engineer
Mm-hmm.
and play it out in my head. Okay, so no one comes to exactly what you
Mm-hmm.
said, and I'm like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? So that makes a huge difference. That's what I've started to do without even realizing that I was doing
So,
it. And I think that the other thing that you mentioned, so I did 1 year psychology. I did
yay!
not a therapist at
No,
all, but
okay, good.
I
Yeah.
remember some key things. They were talking about horizontal and
Mm-hmm.
vertical stressors, and like your outside stressors and your like things that you can control. So
Exactly.
snowstorm, can I control the snowstorm? You know, if it's I bad planning, could I control that? What can I do differently?
Mm-hmm.
Ask the audience, was there
Mm-hmm.
anything I could have changed? So it's about doing that self-assessment essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of finding out why you feel and think that
Right.
way. And if you can't, it's best to go to a therapist.
Right.
Okay, Roxanne is here
Right.
with all the
I'm here.
and, and we need that support because as much as like I'm pretty good at problem solving for other people,
Mm-hmm.
I suck at it for myself. I just recently got a business coach because there were so many things and I had all these ideas
Yeah.
and I was just wasn't structuring myself and I kept putting like everybody and their business first. But then when it came to mine on my end and what I wanted to do, it
Mm-hmm.
was hard for me to execute that. And so again, working backwards,
Yeah.
okay, this is where I want to go. How do I get there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'll try to do it
Yeah.
myself. That didn't work out. Okay, I need someone else to help me. Who can help
Yeah.
me? And then I kind of work backwards. Like, you need a business coach.
Yep.
The business coach, the business
Yep.
coach. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But self-assessment is
Yeah.
huge. Is huge. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
You have a program, Jumpstart Private Practice VIP Day.
Yes.
Mouthful.
Yes. It is.
Can you
It
talk to us
is.
about that and kind of tell
So
us what it's about?
yeah, I see some social workers and some therapists in the audience tonight. So I know a lot of people who are in the mental health space and they might work for organizations and they realize that the organization isn't really treating them well,
Mhm.
or they are completely burnt out, or they see too many clients today, or they're not getting paid enough, and they really want to leave and start a private practice, but they don't know how and they feel stuck. And so I created a VIP day where I talk to people about exactly how to start their practice. We
Mm.
go from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we order lunch in, and I talk to them about from registering your business to the difference between sole proprietorship and incorporation to, how much should you charge your client to? Where should I get clients from? You know, what if I want to bring on an associate? When do I know it's time to hire a VA? Like all those pieces. And we go from start to finish, and people leave with their notes and they are ready to go. So it gives them a little bit of a jump start, because I remember when I was starting, it took me months of calling this person and carrying them out to lunch, asking them if they will sit with me for a coffee, spending money, realizing I spent it on the wrong thing, and it being expensive and taking a really long time, and investing a lot of money in coaching, right? And so I have just honed in everything that I know, and I say, hey, come spend the day with me, save yourself like 6 months of drama, and get started.
Lots of money, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because you end up spending a lot of money, learn from your mistakes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it sounds like we have the same story, Roxanne. Because that's exactly how I started my business as a business consultant, with through all the mistakes and me quitting my job and not having a plan and having to rebrand. I'm like, okay, and I could see certain people like kind of doing the same thing. I'm like, okay, you're not charging the right price that you should be for that product and that service. And I started to go into people's DMs, and I started to, you know, give people my 2 cents. And a number of people like, why don't you become a business consultant? Like, me?
Yes,
I don't know. And, you know, but experience is a huge thing. And that's where like, you come from, is like you went through that and now you're teaching other therapists. And I love that, because like, you're not gatekeeping. Like there's, I think everybody has like issues that need mental wellness to deal with. So there's more than enough work to go around. And I love that gatekeeping. You're like, okay, let me teach you, right? Because you're right, a lot of people don't know what to do, and they feel stuck, which is not stuck. So I want to leave, but I don't know how to go about leaving. I don't know what's the next step. So Roxanne's also a business consultant. I told you. I have a long list, okay, of things that you do. But that's amazing. So you have the VIP day. It's 10 to 3. You get lunch, and it's a group of therapists.
Yeah, it's a group of 5. It's never usually more than 5. And we just spend the day together. I answer all the questions. People bring their laptops, their notebooks. When they leave, I you know, give them access to some folders in my Google Drive. I share forms with them, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, they have 30 days to follow up with me as they implement. Because I really believe in I just pay it forward, you know?
Yeah, of course. I love that. It's amazing. Nikki's asking, do you work with RN psychotherapists?
I have in the past, not for the VIP day, but get into my DMs and we can have a chat.
Okay, good. Amazing. Wow. So this has been amazing, Roxanne. Lots and lots and lots of information. I have my little notepad with all my notes on here. So thank you so much for taking the time out to share a wealth of knowledge surrounding mental health. And in closing, is there any tips you want to give business owners, or just anybody in general, in terms of just trying to maintain mental wellness and good mental health? Is there any tips that you would recommend, whether it's surrounding depression or anxiety or just staying healthy?
Yeah, I would say, you know, save yourself some stress by asking for help, right? And not doing it alone, in terms of finding community. Find a free community group, or join a mastermind, or, you know, join a membership, or hang out with Sue, go to her entrepreneur nights, and find community. Otherwise, you feel like you're doing it alone, and you feel like you're the only one with this issue, and it makes you feel stupid when you're not, right? So it creates a lot of stress. And when I often say that when a problem shared is a problem that's cut in half, right? So talk to people about what's going on, and get the support that you need.
I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Roxanne. And tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, you can always find me on the internet suite at francispsychotherapy.com. You can find me here and on Facebook at Francis Psychotherapy, and you can always search my name on LinkedIn.
Okay, she has a beautiful website. I was on there for like an hour. I love the colors. I love, like, everything is just beautiful and perfect on your website. So guys, I really encourage you to go check out Roxanne on her website. If you know anybody or if yourself you need any help, don't be ashamed. Okay, we're done with
Yes,
that era.
no shame.
If you need help and you're not sure exactly what you're feeling, because sometimes you don't even know
Right,
what you're feeling. You don't know,
right.
right? So you can be experiencing anxiety, depression, and not even recognize it. Why
Mm-hmm.
are you snapping all the time, or why are you sad all the time? So talk to Roxanne. She can definitely help you. And you also have a number of other therapists working with you as
Yes.
well. So you guys, therapy is like, you know me, I'm a big advocate on therapy. I'm always talking about it. At one point I had three. They all had different purposes. So it really does help to speak to someone who can give you a fresh look and on any issues that you might be going through. Okay. So thank you so much, Roxanne, for everything. And guys, I hope you have a wonderful night. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Bye,
Talk soon.
everyone. You're
Bye.
welcome. Thanks. Bye.